Episode number 14.
And the issue is, and it's the way that we define bravery. You may be afraid. The definition of bravery is not that you're not afraid. It's by being afraid and doing it anyway. And I think that we just have to charge forward and block out the noise. I just block out the noise.
Welcome to the GovCon Giants Podcast, federal contracting for people on the outside looking in. If you are here to learn how to win a piece of the pie without getting your face smashed in, then you've tuned in to the right place. Now, the giant that not only walks the walk, but talks the talk, your host, Coffie.
Today's guest, I had the pleasure of meeting her some 10 years ago in 2009 at my first ever How to Do Business with the Government conference in Washington, D.C. It was one of the first times I had ever been to Washington, D.C. And this woman who was at a booth wanting to help small businesses stood out to me. Her name, Beverly Kuykendall. And I remember her distinctly because when I returned home to Miami, Florida, she sent me some emails helping advising me on strategies for improving my business relations with doing business with the government. And probably about 6 to 8 months, we continued back and forth. Nothing ever materialized out of it. But fast forward 10 years later, I was speaking at a conference in Broward, and long and behold, the keynote speaker was none other than Miss Beverly Kuykendall. I was astounded. I knew immediately who she was. She had a very distinct, unique last name, Kuykendall with a K. It took some jogging of her memory to help her remember who I was. But after her sharing her journey of leaving California, selling her consulting business, moving to Florida and working with American Medical Depot, after hearing that story and all the wonderful things she had done for minority businesses and small businesses, all her advocacy work, I knew I had to have her on the show. And today, I'd like to welcome none other than Miss Beverly Kuykendall. She is now the president of government business for American Medical Depot. In 2015, American Medical Depot was awarded a government contract to work with the United States Agency for International Development and DLA to provide more than 1 million adult hygiene kits and regular hygiene kits in response to the Syrian refugee effort. In March 2016, AMD was awarded a $1.2 billion government contract for the provision of medical supplies in more than 60 VA medical centers from Florida to Maine. Ms. Kuykendall is recipient of numerous awards, including the 50 Most Powerful Minority Women in Business, Supplier of the Year, 2013 Small Business Champion of the Year, Entrepreneur of the Year by Black Business Association. She is a frequently requested speaker, again, an advocate for small businesses. I can't think of no one better to have on the show, a powerful woman. Stay tuned because at the end, we discuss what steps can women take to improve their business acumen, particularly in working with the government arena. Stay tuned. I'd like to welcome my friend, my mentor, Beverly Kuykendall.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
No, listen, I appreciate you being on here today. In fact, in preparation for this call, I went back and I found the emails that you sent me many, many, many moons ago.
What's the email address? FCCI Corp?
Yes, it was. But listen, Beverly, I'm telling you, you don't understand. I actually, it's hilarious to see. I actually shared it with Maria today. Your email, it says, and it's funny because you don't remember this, but I remember you. And we met in D.C., and this was 2009.
Oh, my.
2009. And I was with a taller gentleman. His name was Paul Morrow. And you were at the booth. And we were talking about, it was Trimco. I think you're representing Trimco?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they were a client of mine. Yeah.
Okay. And your email to me says, I need you guys to bite the bullet and get a domain name for your email address. For example, Paul at South Dade Air or Evan at South Dade Air.
Oh, my goodness.
I could not think of a better way to start this call today.
Phenomenal.
I could not think of a better way. I mean, it shows where I was at the time, right? And how I've evolved. And I think it's just, it's funny how life is a full circle, right? 10 years later, we're talking today, and I'm the one telling people, bite the bullet and get a domain name for your email address. So if you hear those words, you're going to know where it came from. It started with Beverly Kuykendall.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, wow. Listen, thank you so much. I really, I think you're the GOAT of our industry.
Thank you.
I really do. I mean, all of the accolades, the accomplishments, the speaking engagements, the advisory, I really do. Like I said, for me personally, I'm excited to be on the call with you just because, like I said, when you were part of my journey when I got started, and I remember, like I told people at the conference we were at a few weeks ago in Broward, that I was like them not too long ago, sitting in the audience, watching, admiring, looking up to the people as they were on the podium speaking and telling us about all of this, illustrious opportunities in the federal arena. I remember that very well, fondly. And, now I have the privilege and honor to be the ones teaching, educating, and giving back to those people. So for me, that's what I see in you and what you did for me at the time.
I am humbly appreciative of that recognition and the fact that you remember, and even more so than that, Eric, that you took the information and you did something with it.
Yes.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The beauty is also you have a unique name. so your name stands out, right?
Yes.
Let me see if I can help you remember this. One time, and we're going to talk about you, but I just want to see if you can remember this. You said that I want to try and jog your memory. The company's name was South 8 Air, and you want to help set us up with a meeting with Dexter and Adrian Foster of Foster Construction.
Oh my goodness.
Do you remember that?
I do not. I remember the Fosters.
Okay, remember the Fosters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you were going to set us up with a meeting with them.
Mm-hmm. Did it ever materialize?
Actually, so we did meet the Fosters, but I don't know if you know, but Dexter passed not too long afterwards.
I did not know that. Yeah. I remember that.
He did. Yeah, he actually. They were 8A and they were doing well. They had done some projects in our area because we were down in Miami and Homestead trying to get on the bases, and they were kind of, they were ahead of us, right, leading the charge, and we were in their shadows looking up to them. And then I don't know if it was a stroke or a heart attack, but I was at an event with him at a walkthrough, and then the next week or two he had passed. It was very sudden, very out of the ordinary.
I vaguely remember that because it seems like he had a ship or a boat or a yacht or something. Uh-huh. And I think that some folks from Trimco had joined him on that boat at one point. Of course, and I didn't go. Okay. But I vaguely remember that. Wow, that was 10 years ago. We had some wonderful. I personally had some wonderful experiences through that building that Trimco program. Okay. Because basically gave me a white piece of paper and said, build it. And it was a phenomenal opportunity. And it was, you have those markers of your time in your life. Right. And that's those markers. I mean, I really appreciate the work that I was allowed to do with and for them. I really do. No,
I hadn't seen anything like it at the time. No one else I saw was doing anything like that.
It was, they were a company they are a company of innovators. Mm-hmm. And the reps that worked for them basically kind of owned their own territories in a way. Most of them were straight commission reps. And so when you have an entrepreneurial spirit, you become creative and agile and, become you just are. Right. And I think that mindset permeated throughout the company. It came from the top down. And that's what created an opportunity for me to really, I had so much fun with Trim because I was able to craft it. I was able to envision it, craft it, build it, had people that would, had a great team of people who I was able to lead through that vision. And it was a wonderful experience. It truly was. Wow.
No, that's phenomenal. So tell us, going back before Trimco, how did you first get your start in the government arena? For those of you who have not already heard your story.
Oh my goodness! I was going to ask how much time do you have. I'll try to tell.
We're gonna give us the abridged version.
Oh, you got it. So, many years ago, my husband and I had an 8A company of our own. Okay. We had a company called Management Healthcare Products and Services, and Ron Johnson was the president of that company. My husband was the vice president, Calvin Jones, and I was I don't know what title they gave me, but all of us had ownership in that business. I had met Ron in a previous business that I had started called Kuykendall, and he was a client. And Kuykendall was a company that would, many years ago, people didn't really have computers or they couldn't write. I loved to write. I was a business student. In high school, I was a business student, so I learned stenography and business letters. And then in college, I got my degree in business management, and then I went on to get my MBA. But I remember those days fondly because I love to write, and even now, addiction and the written word is something that I take very seriously. And it's hard, people are not into it today because they're so busy abbreviating everything. But yes. Ron had a company. He wanted someone to do his letters for him. He and my other clients would call into this fancy phone system that I had where they could fast forward and delete and repeat, and they would dictate their letters. I would hear those over my stenographic headphones, and I would type out the letters, and then they would give me their letterhead, and they would give me their envelopes and their postage, and I would send their letters out to them.
Okay, time out. Do you know that we still do that today, right?
No.
Yeah, so for example, when we finish this interview, we're going to send it off to someone to actually transcribe it. So they're going to listen to you and I talk, and they're going to take it and type it up and give me back a transcription version.
Oh, amazing. I had no idea. That technology is still in place. And here's the issue, that it still has value,
right,
which is in.
Right.
And so it takes a really good listener because you have to also listen for the intent, which at the time I had to listen for the intent because the purpose of my being there was to help them have perfect grammar so their companies would look appropriate on paper and look like a bigger company. And so I had to listen for intent. So at any rate, as Ron was dictating these letters, I got to know more and more about his business. He was selling through the Visitors Nursing Association, and he wanted to expand his business. And I called him. I said, I think my husband might be able to help you. He works for Polaroid. The two of them got together, and they started a home health care company that would provide home health care products and services to the home health care market, people who had developmentally disabled homes. They were selling through Medicare and Medi-Cal and providing products for these patients or constituents that lived in the homes that they owned.
Okay.
And so that was a very good business, so good, the profitability was so good that my husband ended up leaving Polaroid and going with management healthcare products and services full time. And at the time, we were double income. They called us DINKs, double income, no kids. And so okay. I said, well, and I was working for Herman Miller, Millcare of the time, at the time. And I said, my job, you left your job and we were doing very well. And I said, I want to do the same thing. So I nagged my husband, and he finally consented, and I left my company. And I had already worked for Procter & Gamble, which is where I met him. I worked for American Hospital Supply Corporation, the McGaw division. I worked for Xerox Medical Systems. And then when I started working for Herman Miller Millcare, I really liked the healthcare market. And so he allowed me to leave, and I went to work for them and hated it. Did not want to go door to door selling adult diapers. I had my degree, and I had my nose in the air, and I thought, no, I can do more than this. Well, with all those companies I just mentioned, I had dabbled in the government market.
Right.
And, I would rather sell B2B. I already had the relationships at the government, federal hospitals in the local areas. I was already selling to VA Loma Linda, VA West LA, VA La Jolla, VA Sepulveda. So I was already selling to those facilities, and I said, why don't they use the same types of products, why don't we sell the products to these institutional users? And so they said, okay, go for it. I loved it. That worked out very well for us. We started transitioning the business. We bought a couple of trucks. We had a local warehouse in Torrance, and we were just happily going to the VAs, taking their orders, and calling the manufacturers. We had developed relationships, and we were selling adult diapers and other DME type equipment and ancillary supplies to the VAs. It was wonderful. And then the government, along that time, I met a gentleman that I was selling to who was a contracting officer with the VA, and he said, have you ever heard of the 8A program? The SBA had a program, Roman numeral 8, small letter A in parentheses, the 8A program, which is a developmental assistance program run through the SBA for small companies. And if you got your SBA certification, they would give you the support And not only would you have the support of the SBA, a large government agency, you would also have the opportunity through that program to sell with limited competition or no competition. It's a beautiful market position to have. And so we were doing that as an 8A company. It was wonderful. And then the government, all these VA hospitals, the government decided that they were going to reinvent themselves. And as they reinvented themselves, I think I told this story from the stage at the Broward County event.
Right.
As they were reinventing themselves, when I looked at the legislation, I'm a geek. I like to look at the legislation. I want to know what's going on. And I realized that we were going to be out of business because the VA was going to a structure whereby they would award a contract to prime vendors. That would be large companies that would have large territories, and that those prime vendors would be operating from a position of quote unquote efficiency because they'd be able to combine their purchases along geographic lines, and they would be making deliveries to the VA hospitals in their geographies.
So my question, that's happening right now.
Yes, it is. And guess what? Guess who's a prime vendor?
You are.
American Medical People is a prime vendor. All of that is connected.
Yeah.
All of it is connected. I tell people we are a 25 or 30-year-old overnight success story. It all started right there.
Wow.
And that legislation I learned a lot through that process. The legislation that got put into place, and really it was a public law that had lied dormant for so long. Now there was new life breathed into it. And this company, American Medical Depot, was one of those first companies that was awarded one of those contracts way back in 92, maybe 93, 94 it got awarded, maybe even 96. And they were one of the companies that got awarded. And so here I am with American Medical Depot today.
Wow. No, that's incredible. Going back to before you worked at American Medical Depot, you had your own consulting firm, Federal and Commercial Contracts, Inc.
Yeah.
And that's where I know you from. How was that period of time when you were working, having your own consulting company? Because a lot of people ask me, my audience from YouTube, about working as consultants in the industry. Can people make money as consultants in this industry?
You have to be very smart about it, and you really have to be able to deliver something that people need, right? So any entrepreneur, you got to make sure that there is a market, a defined market for what it is that you're trying to do. You have to make sure that marketplace understands what you're offering and they can recognize it as something that they need. And then you have to be able to deliver on that need. And I think that what happens is many people, they'll either leave the government and the first thing they do is, well, I was doing this with the government, yes, but they were supported. They had the money. They had the resource support. And so, but now you have to go out and convince people that you can help them do something. You have to ask yourself first, can I really help them? Or am I really just saying all these things are available through the government? And as a consultant, this is Beverly speaking, because I was a consultant for Trimco as well. And I take very great pride in being able to deliver something of value. And that doesn't mean I'm going to go out and tell you how to do it. What FCCI did, we would walk with you hand in hand, and we would go with you on the sales calls that we would set up for you. We would have conversations with you and with the agency over either face-to-face or over the telephone. Okay. We would have those conversations and allow the small business to hear and understand what we were saying so they could learn, they could grow, and now they can start doing it between and among themselves. It's not about just sharing contacts. It's really about the granularity of demonstrating to somebody how it can be done. And I believe that many consultants, particularly if you're in the small business arena, they miss that connection and that opportunity to fill that gap because they say, okay, here's what you do. Okay, now go out and do it.
Right.
And that's great if that's what people need, what people agree that they need. But I felt, and we were very successful at it, that they really needed me, which is also the downside of it, because you either have to train other people to do what I did, or you have to have them provide a resource to you that they invest in that is sitting side by side with you. So we did FCCI did a lot of really critical, important work where our constituents or our customers would really see value. And then I decided, Eric, small businesses don't really have the money or the resources. And that's another mistake that consultants make, particularly those that come out of the federal government. I'm going to work with small businesses. They have no money. Yeah. They're trying to figure it out.
Right.
But you could find a way where a large company, understanding that they really want that piece of the market, they really want to get involved in the small business marketplace as a partner, and either if they want to do it by subcontracting, or if they want to do it by joint venturing or other form of teaming, they really understand that value. They will pay you to help them build a program. And that's what Trimco and a number of other companies did with FCCI. Wow. But you have to be able to sell them on the idea.
That's wow. You know, and we had this discussion briefly, because I tell people all the time, it's small businesses, they don't have the resources, even if they're doing $2-3 million a year after expenses and costs. I mean, there's still enough money to go around.
Correct. And I'll tell you something else too. So people will say, well, large companies can afford a supplier diversity person. And not the same thing. Very, very different. There are, and I appreciate that field of experts, but from my perspective, if those companies can't really help you understand, and I have a couple of examples that recently have come up. If those supplier diversity professionals don't really understand how their company works, and if they don't really have a place at the table, and they're just trying to shove you in and they don't really believe in you, so they're kind of feeling a little insecure about, well, I'm in supplier diversity. And they start having conversations with you like, well, you know, these small companies and those small companies. Right. And if you have contempt for your constituency, you can't really provide any value.
Yeah, you can't serve them.
You can't serve them. So you really have to it takes a very special kind of person to be a supplier diversity specialist or professional who can truly move the needle, both for their large company who is paying them and also for the small business. Otherwise, what happens is they collect companies, right? They may have a roster of, 50 or 60 or 80 or 1,000 small companies that they're working with. How many are actually getting contracts? And if they say, well, then they want to start doing training. And I think there's a place for that training. I think that procurement technical assistance centers help. I think SBA helps. I think the small business development centers help. I think minority business development agency helps. They all help. So I don't think that the training that can be offered by supplier diversity specialists, it has some value if they're really teaching you how to do business with their large company. So there's some gaps there that I think need to be filled. And I'm not saying that to offend anybody, but if we're still in the same place where we were 10 years ago, and if there's still all these small businesses and minority-owned companies that are trying to do businesses with the large, why aren't we moving the needle? There's a gap somewhere, and I think that there needs to be an honest conversation about that. And the result of that conversation can be, well, the small businesses aren't ready. Yeah. There are small businesses.
They've been saying that since I got involved.
Exactly. AMD is a small business. We're ready.
Right.
We've been ready. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been awarded a $1.3 billion contract by the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have a $400 million contract with DOD. We're ready. But it's when you have that conversation on the commercial side, no matter what you say, no matter what you show them, they still view you through the lens of whatever their preconceived notion is about a small business. So it's difficult to get real good buy-in and traction.
Speaking of those contracts, has that changed their perception of you? An American people?
It has not. When you say they, no. And let me tell you, I don't think it has. And I will tell you that when you talk to them, and again, you can't paint everyone with the same brush.
Right.
So it's not all of them. But from their perspective, it is so hard, Eric, for them to look at me or for them to look at the owners of the company and see anything but a small business that needs resources.
Come on.
It's a very difficult thing to the point that I encourage, we hire a lot of people that we hire a diverse slate of representatives for our company so that they can walk through doors that we may not necessarily be able to walk through, right. Even though I will go and I will do the talking.
Right.
Having someone there that looks different than me seems to move the needle. And the other point I'd like to make is that Small businesses are all going, not all, minority companies are going through the supplier diversity door. Sometimes we don't go through that door because it is just too much of a barrier to go through. I walk through the same door as a Cardinal or an Owens and Minor or any of the large companies. It's not as difficult as going through the supplier diversity door. So what happens is that the supplier diversity person, once I'm in, they'll say, well, you didn't call us. Well, I did. Maybe I didn't get a call back. Maybe it's,
right.
I don't know what that is. I can't put my finger on it, but it's something that I would love to see discussed and resolved without this answer of, well, small businesses aren't ready. Okay.
The interesting fact is I have a friend of mine, a personal friend I went to college with, and he was a supplier diversity rep for several large, General Electric. And then he went on to work at SpaceX, and now he's at Amazon. But he said that, and again, from his lens, right, he's never been on our side of the fence. He said, well, Eric, there's not a lot of small businesses out there that can do this type of work.
Yeah, they buy into it.
Right.
And I would say in the case of a SpaceX, they're surrounded in El Segundo by so many small business manufacturers. There are hundreds of them.
Oh, I've had two on the show. I've had two NASA award winners on this show.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
If they want, like you said, if they're the 2017 NASA award winner prime of the, you can't tell me they're small and they can't satisfy some portion of work that you have available.
Right. And the issue truly is once they get to that level, the companies that you're describing, the small businesses, they don't want to be insulted.
No.
I talked to, and I won't say what the company is, but I talked to a diversity person recently, and they lectured me and talked down to me, and it was just amazing. Of course, I was gracious and professional, and I'm thinking, this person, I'd already looked that person up. In LinkedIn, I wanted to know who they were. I knew who their company was. Everything. I knew what they were looking for, everything. But the small diversity person did not take the time to do that with us, and it was so insulting that I would not take the president of my company to a meeting because I didn't want him to be insulted. The person literally sat there basically and pointed their finger and said, well, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do that. It's amazing. Just the basic respect would be wonderful.
Wow. Well, now let's talk about your present company, American Medical Depot. How did you go from, like you said, getting into the program in '93 to now, having the $1.2 billion award? Because it seems like, I did my homework, you're all over the press and everywhere discussing that latest award. You're in Onyx Magazine, National Association of Women Business Owners, Women Construction Owners and Executives. Seems like you're all over the place now, having conversations with people. How did that come about, the award? I know that you started the company only a few years back. How did you take them to that place?
And I would defer and say, I don't know if I took them because Akhil Agrawal and Sukrit Agrawal deserve all the credit and the accolades. That hard work that entrepreneurs do and the entrepreneurial spirit, and they had the vision of what they wanted to become. And they're both Asian Indian. Okay. And I always say that diversity is so important because as we talk to each other and the barriers come down for what you might see in front of your face and you just get to know people, it opens up a tremendous treasure trove of opportunity because now you're getting down to what people can offer one another. And so for AMD was a client of mine. First, we were friends. When I talked about in 92 and 93, that's when I met them, when the public law was being put in place. Akhil Agrawal and I started an organization along with others called the National Minority Medical Suppliers Association because we needed an organization that would go to Capitol Hill and talk about the public law and what was happening and what the possibilities that exist for small companies in the federal arena. And at that time, small companies and small disadvantaged businesses. So I met Akhil many, many years ago. And then he became a client. When my husband and I had the distribution company, my husband encouraged me to do what I was doing because I loved it so much. I love federal contracting so much. I would read the federal acquisition regulation and I would look between the lines and I would look at the possibilities and I would build programs and I would build and go after procurement methodologies so the government could easily buy from smaller minority companies. And that got transitioned over to large companies. American Medical Depot was an integral part of that. They became a client. So FCCI had an agreement, a contract with American Medical Depot, and I represented them to the federal government as well. But the difference between American Medical Depot and my other clients is that they knew me well and they understood how to get what they needed from me. Right? So they understood, we want you to get us in front of these people. We want you to help us create a procurement vehicle. And so all of that, finally they came to me and said, we love the work you're doing with us. And we know you're doing that work with many others. We would like for you to just do that work for us. And I said, no, I love what I'm doing.
By the way, you were in California still at the time.
I was in California at the time.
Just for the audience, so everyone to understand.
Yes, thank you. I was in California at the time. And please slow me down and redirect me whenever you need to.
That's
because
okay.
I can forever.
That's okay.
And at the time, Akil Agrawal, the president of this company, 20 some odd years ago, would call me every day, even before he was a client. And we would just talk about the government arena. And when you talk to people and you're talking about your ideas and you're both on the same page, a lot of creativity begins to happen and you develop things together. And so that's how my contract with them came about. They were my very first client, even before Trimco. They were my very,
okay.
Yes, because they understood and they worked like I did. They worked till they bleed. And so we were able to create some wonderful things in the marketplace. And so finally, Akil and Sukrit made me an offer that I couldn't refuse and basically said, here's what we'll do for you to shutter your windows and you come to work fully for AMD and we want everything you've got. It's the agreement. We don't want you to talk to anybody else. We don't want you to teach anybody else.
Right.
We want you completely. We value you so much, and I feel comfortable saying that we want you to bring your skills and your talents directly to AMD, and we want to give you all the resources that you need to add and make a contribution to our company. And it was a wonderful agreement. I fought it for a long time. I mean, they came after me so many times, and finally, as my husband says, they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, and it was really a great move for me and a great move for them. So they were already along the lines. Everything that Akil and I had talked about over those years, everything that we built as part of the National Minority Medical Supplies Association, and we put into a format, he brought to his company. And so he was one of those few constituents, if you will, who continued to build and to build and to build. They both came from the financial markets, right? They understood basic raw business.
Right. And
they turned, where the rest of us might have been struggling, they turned it into, I won't call it a gold mine, but into something of value, where now we have nearly 200 families. We have 6 warehouses, trucks, vehicles. We have a machine here that is positioned and ready for any segment of the business as it relates to medical supply distribution, third-party logistics, and all of the technology that goes along with that differentiates us.
Wow. When you came to them, I know where you said they were building up to it, but from the time that you got there to now, we know about the $1.2 billion. You discussed a little bit about a war that you had in Syria.
Yes. So we had that. Ask the question, please.
No, I was going to say I was for like syringe needles.
So we are a medical supply distribution company. So the way that we really started was by representing to the federal government capital equipment companies. AMD became an 8A company. I came from the 8A arena. So before I even started with them, if you were an 8A company and you had a limit, if large companies wanted to do business with the federal government, they had to compete with everybody.
Yes.
So imagine shrinking the number of competitors. Now you have a better chance at winning the bid. Imagine eliminating all those competitors altogether and you become the sole source. That's a very attractive position to be in. So we sold our capabilities by selling that piece to large companies and saying, we will represent you to the federal government. Now we're going to provide resources to the relationship, because we don't believe in pass-throughs. That doesn't serve anyone.
Right.
And we will represent your products to the federal government. Maybe you have a sales force if you're a large business. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have a sales force and your sales force is driving right past those government accounts because they find them too difficult to do business with. And they understand the commercial market much better. So AMD started representing, as did Management Healthcare, large companies to the federal government. And so that was really the first foray. So not only did we represent them, we negotiated with them because Akil and Sukrit are geniuses. And we said, we are going to, as we sell to the federal government, we become your distributor and we will pay, we're a small business. We will pay you, manufacturer, after we get paid by the federal government. And so that if the government took 35 days to pay, our monies were not due until 35 days plus 30 days to the manufacturer. And they were willing to do that because we were limiting the competition for them. So that meant that they got to keep more of their profitability.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people seem to, say that they can't get supplier credit from their vendors.
You have to be able to deliver something to them that they can't get without you.
Okay.
So in all of this, you're hearing me talk about a certain certification or a certain position or an understanding of the market. Even without the 8A, AMD is no longer an 8A company. We're out there competing. Right. But I believe that the tools that we bring to the table are unique. And we have become, over that period of time, such experts in the federal arena that we offer something that our partners could not otherwise get.
Right.
And sometimes they think they can. If they can, that's great. But AMD has 4 different divisions now. We have a government team made up of reps that just call on VA, DOD facilities. We have feet on the street. We have an alternate site team that calls on clinics and physician offices, alternate site.
Okay.
We have an inside sales team, and that calls on all the different facilities. We now also have a med-surg prime vendor team that consists of 30 reps that are in the field, and about 15, those are called on-site representatives, and we have about 15 field sales representatives in that arena. And we also have a project sales group team. So now we've developed different divisions within AMD to go after different parts of the market. And that's how we have reinvested in our company. And in all those arenas, we're able to offer our government partners, and when I say that, I don't mean the customers, I mean the manufacturers, offer something unique that they could not otherwise get on their own. Otherwise, why would they even work with you? Right.
Now that's it. Obviously, as people are listening to this, they're going to say, "Wow, this is a major organization. I'm this, 1 or 2 man business just getting started. Maybe I'm a 5-person or 10-person business with 8A just getting started. How does this relate or connect to me?" What would you say?
So I think the connection is still the things that I talked about in Broward, right? That you have to be able to, no matter who you are and what you are, you have to be able to deliver 3 key things to your marketplace. So one is that you have to be able to demonstrate to them what is the return on their investment by working with you. Yep. What are they getting that they couldn't get otherwise? If they invest, because to bring on a new company or to hire a consultant, it takes resources because somebody needs to talk with that consultant and work with them on a consistent basis. Maybe you assign one person to them. Somebody needs to action what the consultant is doing with you or suggesting that you do. That's an investment. So that means that customer, if you will, is invested. So, but they want to make sure they're going to get something for that money. So they invest in you by paying you as a consultant or paying you as a small 1 or 2 man company. No matter what you're doing, they want a return on that. And the second thing is that you have to be able to show them what you can provide for them or what they can gain from their marketplace by working with you than if they didn't have you, if you're not making a difference. So I call that a strategic market advantage. some people do want to be a Me Too company, but in order for you to stand out, and I call it being the prettiest girl in the room, in order for you to stand out, you have to be able to offer people something that they couldn't get without you. Otherwise, and you have to be able, Eric, you must be able to talk about what you can do from that perspective.
Right.
You're able to get without. And the third thing is, so we got the first two, a return on investment, strategic market advantage. The third one is really important. Incremental increase in market share. Are you going to allow them to grow their market based on what you're providing to them? If you're able to do those three things, and they're not easy, it takes study of your market, takes study of your constituency. You've got to be the expert at whatever it is that you're endeavoring to do, whatever it is that you're selling. You have to really understand the mindset of your customer. And I got to tell you, today, with all the technology and with Google and with Bing and there is no excuse not to understand, because most of the information is available to you at your fingertips. Yeah. You have to be willing to study it. You can't say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to get rich quick. No such thing. And maybe you can, but it takes some blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah, in order to do it.
Yeah, definitely. At the Broward conference, you mentioned spending your weeks in Washington, that you fly back and forth.
Yes, sir.
Tell me why you think that's important.
I think visibility is important, and that your company must have a footprint, if you will. Okay. And so for AMD, right, and we're still a small business. I want to make that clear. We're a small business under our NAICS code, our North American Industrial Classification System, 423450. It's the manufacturing NAICS. We have under 500 people. Okay. And so there's a lot of runway there depending on what your NAICS code is, because it varies by NAICS code. So what AMD does as a small business is we spend time in Washington with our customers. So, for example, with the VA MedSurg Prime vendor, we are a VA MedSurg Prime vendor for all the VA hospitals along the eastern seaboard. And it's funny because you started asking me about a PSG requirement, but I'll talk about that as well. Along the eastern seaboard. So we're a prime vendor. We're now providing either just-in-time or conventional distribution services to about 60 hospitals for the VA. And it took us a long time to get there. So that's a big opportunity, because we have an opportunity to serve our nation's veterans, but also we're not leaving anything to chance. So you do have the VA committee, right, that represents the VA, that you have congressional and senatorial representatives and staff that oversee the VA committee. So we want to make sure that we have a connection and that they are hearing from us as a prime vendor and as a small business. And so we make sure we keep those connections open. The VA National Acquisition Center is in Chicago, but the VA Strategic Acquisition Center is in Fredericksburg, Maryland. So I fly into DCA and we meet with them. We make sure we have FaceTime and we talk about the status. We give an account review. I spend time, the VA has an Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. We're a small business. Ruby Harvey leads that effort for the VA as Executive Director of the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization for the Department of Veterans Affairs. You think I need to know her and let her know who we are? Absolutely. Wow. So that FaceTime is very important. I want them to know me when they go to a conference. And there are things that small companies can do. Maybe they can't be in Washington every week. You know, when I was in California, I was in Washington at least 4 or 5 times a month. It's a lot easier now, right? Now it's a 2-hour flight or an hour and a half flight versus a 5 or 6 hour flight from LA. But even then, as a smaller company, as FCCI, it was important for me to have a footprint in Washington. And you can't just go and say, oh, hey, how you doing? What's your strategy for the conversation? How do you want to engage with them? How do you want them to see you? How can they help you? You have to be able to answer those questions so that when you're talking to them, their eyes aren't rolling in the back of their head because you're just not another company. How do you make yourself stand out? And I think by being an expert and investing in your company so you really understand what it is you need from them and you really understand your customer. We know our customers. AMD has a protocol for conferences and how we approach customer meetings. We never go in cold and say, oh, what can you do for us? What do you want?
Get out
We
of
owe, we,
You have a protocol for that.
That doesn't work. You have to show them a little bit. And I always tell our folks here, and you have to already know the information. You have to know who they are. You have to know exactly how you can meet their needs, or at least have a recommendation for them. And you also have to be able to be quiet and ask them questions that you may already know the answer to, and let them feed you with information. And then you use that information to gain a foothold on doing business with them, or at least the next meeting.
So you think that this is a strategy for small business? Like if you have the ability to go to Washington to even if, let's say, you had a small business person in your local region, say for like a Navy or NAVFAC, you think we should go to the Washington office?
I think you should do both. Absolutely. I think, first of all, local is very important. Make sure those local people know you, right? And I would do that first. It's always good to go close to home. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go too far away. Even AMD talks about that in our own backyard. We have hospitals that we're not doing business with. They're not government hospitals that we're not doing business with. And local is important. You know why? If you're a small company and you can talk local, you can talk about having a direct and indirect impact on the local economy. That's what you really want to do. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to create jobs. And you want that local federal agency, by awarding you a contract, to help you with that, because that's also their mission. If they're lending resources to the small business community, you want the small business community to grow, and you want them to grow by being able to create jobs. And then you want those people who have those jobs to go to the local grocery store, bank at the local bank, go to the local cleaners, eat at the local restaurant. You want to build out the community. So it's all very important. Local is important. National influence is important as well. And you need to know exactly everybody should know their local congressional representatives and their senatorial representatives. You should see them at home, and you should also go on the Hill and see them. And if you're working for a particular agency, every agency has a small business liaison office. You need to see them in Washington, see them locally, but you need to see them in Washington too. Local first stuff.
Listen, you're still teaching me stuff.
It's important to, and well, thank you for that, but it's important to, the space that you occupy isn't just for the space that you occupy, right? You have to grow tentacles throughout. And when I look at the 200 or so families that we have here in AMD, that's very important to me, that they have what they need, and that we're taking public funds in order to support the federal government. And so we want to be able to hire people and educate people and bring them on board to train them. And they do. They go to local grocery stores, everything. So from a national perspective, and the other thing I say to our local hospitals that are not government hospitals is that we are a local distributor. We're national, but we're right here in your own backyard. Yeah. Broward Health. We're right here in your own backyard. University of Miami Medical Center. Uh-huh. We're right here in your own backyard. And we are hiring from the local area, creating jobs and creating opportunities and making an impact on the local economy.
And that's what all the politicians get up there and they say they want to happen in every constituent, in every Congress, in every district around the United States.
Exactly.
I noticed that you recently on your profile, you posted about doing an MOU with the Department of Commerce and MBDA for minority-owned firms in healthcare. Can you talk about that? I love that.
It's interesting. That MOU was done, Memorandum of Understanding, was done quite a while ago, actually. And it was, I'm co-founder, along with Akhil Agrawal, of another organization called the Healthcare Supplier Diversity Alliance, HSDA4Diversity.org, HSDA4Diversity.org. I just was on the phone earlier with the president of that organization. AMD is a board member, and they're actually having a conference in June. And we will be on the program, but we're also hoping to do some other things. But that organization is made up of group purchasing organizations from across the country and supplier diversity people from across the country. And their mission is to help educate and provide opportunities for small businesses in the medical arena to gain a foothold, to do business with group purchasing organizations, one like Premier, for example, or Vizient, which is under Premier, Health Trust, CHSI, to do business in the commercial sector. And that board is made up of some pretty prominent people, supplier diversity folks, but folks that also understand supply chain. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was important for the organization to have a linkage to Washington, D.C. through the Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Agency, because the MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency, also creates opportunities for companies, no matter the size, but minority companies, Minority Business Development Agency, throughout the country. They have a number of MBDA centers that are funded by the federal government across the country, and they have resources available to small businesses. So the link was, and to minority companies specifically. So the link was if HSDA has a mission that's aligned to help diverse companies do business in the commercial sector with commercial hospitals or commercial entities in the healthcare arena, then our missions are aligned. And so I thought I had some relationships there through Washington. I'd done a lot of speaking for MBDA, and I always like to come up with a reason to be relevant. Relevancy is very important. It's good to know you, Eric, but what's the relevancy? What can we really do together? Right. And that was my philosophy with developing this MOU, so that we can align our missions and our resources to help create more opportunities for minority companies in the commercial sector. And that was the impetus behind that MOU. So MBDA had some resources, HSDA had some resources. We combined those resources, and they created more opportunities for minority companies across the country.
Incredible. Wow. Well, let me tell you, I can say that was a mouthful, and people might have to go back and rewind that to get the gist of what you just said. It was a lot to grasp, but the intent is there, the purpose is there, and what, and your mission, what you're trying to do. And I love the point of being relevant, because you're right. A lot of us out here, we just kind of go through and exist and not thinking about how can we serve our client, our constituent, our customer, and learn more about them. So I think that was great. Before we let you go, what advice would you offer? And we've already talked about some things to women entrepreneurs.
Oh my goodness! So that's an entirely different conversation.
Well, because the thing is, I see that you do a lot of work in that space, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm going to say this: I've had 3 women on my show that have been incredible, and I can't say enough for women entrepreneurs. And to have you on here and not ask the question would just be. Would not do justice to having you here today. I think
you would be remiss.
I would be.
Yes,
remiss.
you would be.
Yeah, I would.
Very good.
Because I've seen it. I had, Angela Byrne and I've had on here, Nargis Ali, and these people are doing work in Afghanistan, and one of them, the largest woman-owned contract by USAID, 500 million. I mean, we have to encourage and support, people out here who are second guessing themselves, and let them know that this is possible and it exists. And, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, now that you've said that, I'd like women to understand that we all second guess ourselves at some point. We all have, right? And it's a continuum along the line. It's a line of continuum where you start out thinking one thing. And it was funny. I was just having a conversation with Sukrit Agrawal, the COO of our company, and he has very young daughters. And he was talking about how bright they are. And so I asked him the question. I said, how are you going to prepare them for what they're going to be faced with in the world as bright women that you are so proud of? I think they're like 6 and 7. They may be younger than that, but very, very young. And I'm watching him, and I love hearing him talk about his children and how he's trying to guide them and lead them. And he said, well, they're going to inherit a world different than the one you inherited. You had to be ready for that fight. You had to be ready for people thinking less of you. Never mind being an African American woman, right? Always trying to dispel the myth. And the issue is, and it's the way that we define bravery. You may be afraid. The definition of bravery is not that you're not afraid. It's by being afraid and doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I think that we just have to charge forward and block out the noise. I just block out the noise. And I was raised, and I'm not a spring chicken, but I was raised to be quiet and be silent. And then I went to school. And boy, I tell you what, it was an entirely different opportunity. So what's the word of advice I would say? Just continue to move on. And I also want people to know, make sure that when you're out there and as you're growing your businesses, that you don't cubbyhole yourself and only go to women's events and only go to minority events and only go to small business events. Go to places where you can be, and I'm not just saying this because I'm addressing the women's question. Go to places where you could be the prettiest girl in the room. Go to places where you may be the only one, right? African Americans and minority people are used to being the only one or one of three out of thousands.
I've been that way since elementary school.
I mean, we're used to that, right? So we walk in the door. That's okay. That's fine.
That's normal for me. Since I was gifted, I've been the only one of everything. So.
Exactly. Yeah. That's just the way it's been. So we're accustomed to that. We're comfortable in that role. Some women may or may not be comfortable. I say do it anyway. Go, put on your red suit. And what I say to them, when you go to a conference, wherever you are, and I'm answering the question in the way that Beverly answers it, you wear your red suit, you stand up, you ask a question. And for God's sake, stand up, introduce yourself, say the name of your company, what you do, and then ask your question. And make sure it's a relevant one that applies to most people in that audience. Let yourself be seen. Use that light that's inside of you to make a difference. And it's not really just about you. It's about the service that you're looking to provide through your company. I don't know what else to say about that. I was recently, so Shonda Rhimes has a book, The Year of Saying Yes, something like that. And in her book, she talks about going to an event. And at this event, there were women, very powerful women, being celebrated, producers and directors of the entertainment industry. I use that as a reference. I'm from LA, right? I've only been in for 6 years. And so she said during this event, the women were being celebrated. Each one was being introduced really beautifully about her background and what she had offered to the community and other women and blah, 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 and how successful they were in their field. And she said, without exception, every woman shrunk down in her seat and shook her head and put her hand, and in some way said, that's nothing. Oh, shucks. And she said, aren't we past that point? Aren't we ready to say, yes, I did it. Yes, I'm good. You can do it too.
Wow. No, that I think you said it well. Listen, we're going to have to circle back around for round two. I know you're on limited time. I'm on limited time. You're traveling. I'm traveling. This has been great. I'm excited I ran into you in Broward.
Thank you. And I hope I did this, like Oprah always said, everybody wants to know how they did. And I hope I did it justice. I'll see when I read it back. I've done a couple of podcasts and never with a friend, with somebody that I knew before. Uh-huh. So I thank you very much for that opportunity, Eric. And I thank you also for what you are doing. I think it's important for people to hear. They need to be exposed and to hear. And how do you get that exposure? You don't always have to go and be in that place. You can do a webinar. You can listen to a Skype. You can listen to a podcast. Different ways to be involved. So I thank you very much for the opportunity. American Medical Depot thanks you very much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much, Beverly. What did you learn from today's episode? I love the part where she spoke about the need to be intentional and that there are 3 key things that you need to get out of every conversation. If you did not write that down, no worries. We will have all of the links to the show notes on our website, govcongiants.com/podcast. Did I not tell you she was an incredible woman, a powerful speaker, an advocate for small businesses, minority businesses, women-owned businesses? If you have not already left us a rating on iTunes, please do so that we can bring more wonderful speakers such as the one we had today. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we'll see you next time.